So as you said, my name's Nigel Wilson. I'm the founder of Awaken AI, which is a small consultancy company, and I'm also co-founder of We in AI, which is a not-for-profit organisation in the UK looking at informing people on the good and the bad of artificial intelligence. So I've got a kind of few slides that I put together for you, and this may seem like a Dr. Seuss nonsense sentence, but kind of as we've gone through the kind of pandemic, it's been clear that we've never been so far apart in terms of not being able to travel and social distancing and our restriction of movements, and now, you know, even more so with the lockdowns that were announced yesterday. But we're also so close together in terms of home working and homeschooling, Zoom calls and Teams calls and all the other products that I could mention, for not only for work and conferences, but with our friends and family as well. And Sharon talked yesterday about the sense of community that this conference kind of brings about, and you know, we're seeing that throughout our kind of lives as well. Yet at the same time, the same technology that's bringing us together is actually creating a wider divide, and the divide is between those who have and those who have not. And one of the examples of that is UNESCO did a study during the pandemic, and they've said that 90% of education has been disrupted as a result of it, and that means that people are homeschooling and using kind of remote learning tools. But at the same time, less than 50% of the educational population have access to online learning. So in the same way that technology is bringing us close together for conversations like this, for those that don't have it, it actually is kind of reinforcing the divide that we have. Also, it's a little while ago now, during the pandemic, the World Economic Forum published an article, and they talked about systemic connectivity. And what they were talking about is the way that we can no longer work in silos. We can't have silo thinking and silo doing and silo ways of working. And that is because the world has become this massive connected place. And what happens in one part of the world affects what's happening in another part of the world. And the late Douglas Adams, in one of his books, talked about the fundamental interconnectedness of all things, how we were all kind of connected together and each thing that happened affected something else. And we see that through societies, economies, and the environment, that we're all connected together. And the pandemic has also speeded up technology, which was already going at a kind of fast rate of knots. And we're entering this period that I call technological hyper-acceleration. So being a bit of a geek, is a bit like in Star Wars, where they're sat in the ship and they push the kind of hyper speed button, and whoosh, you see all the kind of flashing lights, and away it goes. We're entering this massive acceleration in terms of technology. And Helen talked this morning about Satya Nadella from Microsoft talking about 2 years worth of digital transformation in 2 months, and that was back in April timeframe. The following month, actually, Accenture made a similar statement, and they said they've seen 3 years worth of digital and cultural transformation in 3 months. So you can kind of see the rate of change. And only a few weeks ago, Twilio did some research, and they've said that there's been 6 years worth of acceleration in digital transformation across the board. Yet we're still facing this challenge of the digital divide. And you know, as well as the kind of the massive acceleration that we see, we also see this economic downturn, and the pandemic has caused people to lose their jobs, has caused loss of revenues, companies to go bust, and as I said, has even stopped education. And as a result of that, world leaders and everybody around the world are looking at ways that they can kind of reboot and kickstart their economies. And one of the things that they're looking at is technology, and they're looking at artificial intelligence. And that's because technology has played a massive part in keeping the world connected and keeping the world going, and also helping with a number of the challenges in terms of the pandemic. So things like healthcare, where we've been looking for vaccines, and AI has kind of formed part of that. And if you follow any of the kind of media press around the pandemic and COVID and healthcare, you see lots of references to artificial intelligence and how it's been helping solve those problems. So we have the economic downturn, but we also have the opportunity now to kind of turn that around with technology. So you may think from all of that artificial intelligence is the answer to all of our problems, and depending on who you listen to, you kind of may well be told that that's the case. But actually, it's not. During this conference, we've kind of heard that artificial intelligence is actually this combination of power of the cloud, the amounts of data that we have, and the algorithms that we're using. And those three things combined are creating this kind of surge in artificial intelligence, even further powered by the pandemic. But actually, we're missing out a really important element, and that's us as people. And we need to be at the center of any solutions that get created. So in the middle of this kind of period of hyper acceleration, we need to make sure that we are at the center of it. And one of the things that I see a lot, and it's been for several years now from Silicon Valley, is there's this mentality of we need to move fast and break things. And that's not a good place for us to be. And we've seen the result of that, moving fast and things being broken. But actually, what we need to do is use this opportunity that we now have to act in a responsible way. And that comes on to the way that the press report what's going on in the world of artificial intelligence. And this is a headline from, I think it was end of last week in one of the papers. And these kind of headlines do us no favors. The imagery does us no favor in terms of what it's showing us, and talking about AI becoming this dominant life form and keeping humans as if they're plants kind of doesn't help at all. And we need to change that kind of narrative in terms of what's happening in the press. And it's not just the press. So we see this as well with what's been going on with some of the things with the algorithms that have been affecting the exam situation. And so, as you probably know, teachers predicted grades of the exams for the kids. The government then decided they'd use the algorithms in order to better inform those grades, and actually created this great disparity in terms of kind of people's grades, and to much complaint actually undid what they did. So we also need government and we need leaders to act responsibly to make sure that we as the people kind of have trust in these algorithms. And it's often said that artificial intelligence is just a mirror of our bias. So the bias that we all have as human beings is mirrored back by artificial intelligence. So I'd argue that's not the case. Artificial intelligence is an amplifier of our bias. So, in this image, we see somebody stood in front of a mirror. And if you've ever put a mirror in a mirror and seen the two reflections, you get this infinite reflection. So you get this amplification. And as an individual, if we're biased or we're kind of a bad actor, we can have a negative impact. But artificial intelligence can amplify that beyond all intention, whether that be something that's a malicious intention or an unintended consequence of something that's been done. So we need to ensure that the tools we use are used in a responsible way. But in the same way as we have this amplification of the negative side of things, it can actually amplify the good in human nature and in society as well. So the solutions that we create should be all of the things that we've just heard about in terms of kind of ethical AI. They should be fair and they should be trustworthy. They should be inclusive. We should have transparency and accountability, and they should respect our privacy. But above all, they should be responsible solutions. And something that we call responsible AI is not a choice, it's an obligation of countries and governments and organizations to implement in this way, but also it should be insisted on us as global citizens that we have these solutions. And so why is that the case? Because currently we struggle quite frankly with some of these technologies, which is why we have these frameworks and we have the governance and we're waiting for legislation around some of these areas. But actually the future is much closer than we actually think it is. And in this statement, the uncertainties of our future, actually the problems of today, is so true, because there are technologies that are waiting to be implemented in the final stages of development, which are going to dramatically impact our lives. And if we don't have a good hold on technology as it stands now, then what chance do we stand of the technology in the future? And I thought I'd just give you a kind of quick example of that. And kind of going back, way back in time, 2500 BC, we had the abacus, the very early kind of form of calculator. In the 20th century was the digital age. And we saw the start of the fourth industrial revolution that Sharon talked about yesterday, and silicon and computers, and Bill Gates saying there's going to be a computer on every desk, and now pretty much we all have one sat in our pocket in our smartphones. But the 21st century will be the century of quantum computing, which will be the next generation of computers. And just to give you an example of the way that the difference that this makes, this is a maze, and on this maze there's a light bulb at the center, and there's a traditional computer is trying to find its way to the center of the maze here. And the way that it would do it is just evaluate each of the paths that you can see it's trying to do until it found the one that took us to the center of the maze. The way that things work in the quantum world is it evaluates every single path simultaneously and just gives you the right answer. So not all of us are trying to get to the center of a maze, but if you think of if you're trying to search for files on your hard disk, or you're trying to search for something in a database, and sequentially we're going through the database trying to find something, just to go immediately to the right answer and to be able to return that gives you an exponential speed up on the kind of technologies that we have today. And why are we trying to? Why do we need this, and why are we trying to do it? Because we need to address what we call some intractable problems that are really hard to solve. And a great example of that through the pandemic has been things like, as we've started to try and look for cures and vaccines. And if we take a traditional computer and try to apply to that, it trying to look for answers to simple atomic problems, then we end up with something that ends up being age of the universe, or billions of years worth of compute time in order to be able to do it. And even with the advances that I was talking about in terms of technology, we're still talking, a little bit faster, but still billions of years to be able to do it. So those simple atomic models that we're trying to model, when we use quantum computers, it's been estimated that we're going to be able to do in years and potentially months or even weeks. So this gives us the massive power that we need and actually to kind of fix some of those problems. And this morning, Helen talked about kind of in silico as an organization in the US, but in silico is also a term that we use for modeling the human body in silicon. And via doing that, we can take things like vaccines and apply it to a digital twin of ourselves to see what impact that virus or that vaccine may have on us. We can do that to a limited extent with traditional computing. With quantum computing, we'll be able to use many more models, which are much more representative of the diverse population that we have in the world, in order to come up with those sort of solve some of those problems. And so as we talk for kind of AI for good, this is absolutely a foundation of kind of how we can help with AI for good, because nitrogen fixation, one of the biggest problems that humanity has now, and that's how we use so much energy in order to create fertilizer to kind of feed the plants that we have. We can come up with new methods using quantum algorithms to help with nitrogen fixation. And carbon capture, with climate change, obviously a big issue, material science, and just general speed up of machine learning algorithms. And you may think that this is kind of somewhere out there in the kind of future in terms of these timescales. And although we don't have appreciably sized quantum computers as yet, what we do have is people working on quantum algorithms, and those algorithms are actually starting to inform traditional type algorithms that we're using to kind of make those go faster and to make those better as well. And as I say, with climate change, we have less time than we thought to make more progress than the world needs, and this potentially is a way of kind of helping us solve that. With every upside, there's a downside, and this is an RSA2048 hash algorithm, and that this number is two prime numbers multiplied together to give you this algorithm. And if you were to try and work out which two numbers I'd use to generate the long number on the screen, it would take you a very long time. In fact, it'd take you around about 1 billion years, again, like lifetime of the universe kind of times. With an appreciable size quantum computer, we're talking about 100 seconds, which means As soon as we have an appreciably sized quantum computer, then we will be able to decrypt every type of encryption on the planet as we stand at the moment. So as well as being a force for good, then it could be seen as a negative force. And obviously people are working on post-quantum cryptography already in order to ensure that that doesn't happen. But this really goes back to what Sharon said at the keynote yesterday, at the very start, when you talked about his rock and throwing it at the kind of wolf that was looking to kind of attack there. AI is just a tool in the same way as that rock is a tool. And how we use the tool and what we use the tool for will inform us as kind of human beings. We can use it for good or we can use it for negative. Obviously our hope is that we use it for good and we use it to solve some of these problems, but the choice is ours. And so finally, this is a kind of quote that I love from a guy called Neil Turok. And it just sums things up so well, because we are, as humans, analog. We're, as Sharon said yesterday, we're curious by our nature, we're imaginative, we're creative, we're very sensory individuals, and we see light and shade and kind of curves and the beauty of nature. But we're increasingly living in a digital world which is either on or off, a naught or a one. And the challenge that we have is to embrace technology, but use it to enhance what we have as individuals for the benefit of humanity and for the benefit of all of us. And of course, the final bit, kind of talks towards the fact that we're heading towards this quantum future, which we need to be aware of, and we need to make sure that we approach AI responsibly. And it's incumbent upon all of us to do that and to kind of make sure that we end up with solutions that are AI for good and not negative. So thanks for the short time that you've given me to talk today. Really appreciate it. You can follow me. I'm very active on social media. You can follow me on these kind of hashtags, and you can email me at this email. If anybody wants to follow up afterwards, I'm more than happy to have that conversation with you. But thanks for your time and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you.